The first time I met Orion's secretary, she gave me a surprise that almost knocked me over. The car window was opaque, so I didn't see that Orion's secretary was sitting in the passenger seat. Just as I was about to open the car door, she suddenly opened it from the inside. I was hit so hard that I was in great pain and tears and snot were streaming down my face. Orion, however, only tried to defend her, saying, "The girl is a bit rash." But she didn't mean it. The seeds of conflict were sown from that moment. From then on, Orion always took the side of his little girl, although I could gain the upper hand in some situations. In fact, I was the only one who got hurt. Later, I finally realized that I couldn't keep being stuck in this quagmire. So, without discussing it with Orion, I directly submitted a divorce application to the court. When Orion received the summons, he was extremely remorseful. Finally, having fulfilled, he was able to talk to me properly. "Honey, as long as you don't divorce me, I'll agree to any condition you put forward." I thought for a moment and asked him, "I want to be the president of the company, and you go home to take care of the kids. Do you agree to this condition?" At the company's anniversary celebration, I was left out in the cold. Throughout the banquet, Orion was with Irene, flitting around among various guests like a butterfly. In contrast, as the president's wife, I was seemingly respected, with nothing to do, but in fact, my presence was greatly diminished. If you ask who dared to provoke me like this, of course, it was Irene, my husband's new assistant, and if you ask who gave her such audacity, apart from my powerful husband, who else could it be? Since we met face to face today, let's settle this once and for all. Finally, having fulfilled it was the time for reminiscing about the past and appreciating the present. According to the usual practice over the years, the founding members of the company would go on stage to give speeches, either reminiscing about the hardships and joys of the past or envisioning the future. In short, this was an essential part of the event. And it was also the part when I had to go on stage. I hid in the restroom in advance. Since they wanted to ignore me, I would deliberately make myself more isolated and uncooperative. First, I would make them look bad, and then I would disrupt the event. I took out my phone in the restroom. The company's anniversary celebration was being live-streamed, allowing directors who couldn't attend to join in the excitement. According to the normal order, I was supposed to speak after Orion. At this moment, Orion was speaking eloquently while frequently looking behind him, as if paying attention to whether I had come so that he could hand me the microphone. The host was also a bit flustered. After all, my absence had disrupted his original script. Seeing that I didn't come for a long time, Orion's face darkened, and the host, as if having made up his mind, took the microphone from Orion's hand and continued speaking calmly. The speeches were given in the order of official positions. I secretly returned after most people had finished speaking. Then, wet on a low sigh, I walked onto the stage with leisurely steps. As soon as the host saw that I had actually appeared, he was flustered for a moment. He looked at Orion, and I also looked at him, only to find that Orion's face was even darker. I walked onto the stage as if no one else was around and stood behind the last speaker. The host quickly weighed the situation. After the previous person finished speaking, he quickly handed the microphone to me, and said, "Madam is the grand finale, the treasure of our company. Now, let's invite Madame to talk about the company's development and her feelings over the years." It seemed as if it was a deliberate arrangement for me to be the last one. I didn't follow his lead, breaking his attempt to gloss over things. I took the microphone with a faint smile and said, "Sorry, I'm late." Then I made a helpless expression. "It's all because of this phone. Playing with the phone these days really wastes a lot of time. By the way, when did this start? Why didn't anyone call me?" At this point, the employees sitting below started whispering. Orion was standing next to me, at an either too close nor too far distance, and it seemed that we were quite affectionate. Hearing this, his expression changed slightly, and he wanted to take the microphone from my hand to prevent me from saying more. But I gently dodged and avoided him. Taking advantage of the host's inattention, I quickly snatched a script from his hand. I held the microphone and looked at the script, pretending not to care. Is there really a part for me in this session? I'm really confused. Come on. Let me take a look. The host was a bit anxious. He didn't know what I would say next and how he should respond. I looked at the script seriously and read it out loud. After President Orion finishes his speech in the reminiscing about the past and appreciating the present session, Mrs. Orion should speak. Remember, she is also a major shareholder. And there should be a line prompt here. I pretended to suddenly understand. Sure enough, there is a part for me in this session. By the way, I didn't notice that this program had started. Why didn't anyone remind me? Was it because you couldn't find me? The host really wanted to pick up the conversation, but found it difficult. The fact that I had been left out was now made public. I saw Irene standing at the place where she was in charge of the overall situation. Her face gloomy, biting her lower lip tightly. I added another blow. I've been sitting at that table all the time. I didn't stand up and walk around. The colleagues at that table can testify. I pointed with my hand. And that seat was really remote. Many people started whispering. Was it really okay to put the major shareholder, Mrs. Orion, in such an inconspicuous place? Many people were also sighing. Even the founding members on the stage looked dejected. I continued. Let me talk about reminiscing about the past and appreciating the present. Well, is there really a need to say it? Isn't this what you've been doing today? I've suffered again. And I don't know if I can recall the so-called sweetness again. It was almost like a complete breakdown of our relationship. But I couldn't be the villain. So I immediately tried to smooth things over. Of course. There's no need to say it. The hardships we endured back then were not in vain. How many people fell on the way of starting a business? As for President Orion and I, Orion was looking at me with a gloomy face. His expression as cold as water. He seemed to not care much. As if he had given up. I stopped halfway through my words and looked at Orion. Sighing. This sigh made Orion freeze. I was very emotional. The days when we shared and woe were gone. After a while, I spoke again. Cherish what we have while we can. The people below didn't know what earth-shattering words I was going to say and were holding their breath waiting. When they heard me say cherish what we have while we can, there was an outburst of laughter. Well, I didn't expose the last bit of pretense. But they seemed even more ashamed. After the laughter, the crowd gradually quieted down and secretly pondered the meaning of my words. I looked at the people with different expressions. Slowly walked down the steps. And returned to my remote seat. I also have a share in the company. I can't really cause a huge impact on the company. But I don't want those two to have an easy time either. For the next part of the event, Orion wanted to drag me along to socialize. But it was too late. Good intentions that have passed their expiration date can no longer be accepted. I declined politely. I haven't worn high-heeled shoes for a long time. And my feet are blistered. Orion gritted his teeth and said, "Don't you know to bring a spare pair of shoes?" I spread my hands. I haven't participated in these activities for a long time. So I forgot. In fact, it was because of Orion. Not only was I left out today, but he hadn't taken me out to socialize for a long time. So I just didn't remember. He sighed helplessly, as if he had no way to deal with me, and said to me with a bit of indulgence, "Well, when we see off the guests later, hold on and go with me to see them off." I pretended to be thinking, that's not right. This item wasn't in the plan we agreed on. Was it? I pretended to be distressed. Did I remember wrongly? Orion's face turned livid. Athena, how long are you going to keep making a scene? Me making a scene? My face turned completely cold. Do you even know what you're talking about? Orion turned his face away, pretending to be magnanimous. In public. I won't argue with you. Let's talk about it when we get home. I went home and waited for Orion. As a result, I waited for several hours. I had even fallen asleep once before he came home. I looked at his staggering figure with a gloomy expression. He, on the other hand, said to me calmly, "I went to have a drink with Lao Wu and the others. Don't think too much. Get me some hangover soup." I asked the housekeeper aunt to come and take care of him. And then I turned around and went back to sleep. But Orion exploded. Athena. What on earth are you going crazy about? I've been working so hard. Inside and out. What have I done to I'm sorry you? Can't I have a female employee around me? Do you see other bosses' surroundings as if they're all like a month's temple? After saying that, as if he had a lot of reason on his side, he slammed the door and left, and I won't wait for him anymore. Because Orion and I were supposed to attend a banquet tonight. So our son was sent to my mother's house. Now I'm the only one at home. I pondered for a moment and then called my niece who was in college. Aren't you going to have a birthday party? Do you want to change the venue and keep the party going? Champagne, caviar, everything you want will be available. Auntie will treat you. On the other end of the phone, I heard my niece cheering. She even blew me a big kiss through the phone. As more and more young people poured in, my huge mansion became very lively. Some people even didn't recognize who I was and came to invite me for a drink. In the deafening music, my bad mood disappeared completely. Can money buy happiness? It seems so. It doesn't have to be him who gives it to me. My niece wanted to have an all-night party. I left at dawn. Before leaving, I specifically told my niece that she didn't need to clean up anything. The housekeeper aunt would do it. My niece would probably end the party at 5 in the morning. And the housekeeper aunt would arrive at 8. Orion would come home to change clothes during this period. Let him see this mess. If he doesn't want to come home, and he can forget about this home. When I turned on my phone again, a lot of missed calls from Orion flooded in. There were more than the total number of missed calls from him throughout last year. There were also voice messages one after another in WeChat. But it didn't matter anymore. I had already boarded an international cruise for a round-the-world trip with my 3-year-old son. Before he starts school, I want to take him on a tour around the world. I brought an Annie and a tutor with me, which made things easy and stress-free. When you have money, of course, you know how to enjoy life. It's not like I have to be with a man. However, during this period, Orion will receive a court summons. Without discussing it with him at all, I directly submitted a divorce application to the court. The property division has also been properly negotiated with the lawyer. If he keeps making a fuss, having fulfilled my ancestor, then during my round-the-world trip, we will have been separated for exactly 2 years. By then, the divorce will be a certainty. As for when I made up my mind to divorce, well, it wasn't really a long time ago. Like most women, I left the workplace to become a housewife because of giving birth. From the moment I left the company, Orion and I seemed to be heading in different directions. Time drifted us apart. At first, Orion would complain, "Honey, the company really can't function without you." Later, he became complacent and said, "As a boss, it's all about knowing and using people. It's best not to do everything yourself." So, even he started to play the game of managing people. Why wouldn't I be sidelined? It was only natural that I was left idle. There was no need for me to struggle in the workplace anymore. But I felt empty inside, with no sense of purpose. A voice in my heart seemed to tell me that my life shouldn't be like this. However, looking at the luxurious house in front of me and the abundant numbers in my bank account, I tried to persuade myself to be content. I shifted my focus to taking care of him and our son, wholeheartedly. Especially Orion. I seemed to rely on him more than ever. But he was the opposite of me. From trying his best to respond when I shared every little thing about our baby with him, to having no reaction at all when I told him that I would cry when listening to Pegasus, assuming it's a song. It was just a matter of 2 or 3 years. So I let myself go, mingling with the circle of wives, allowing the worldly affairs to submerge me. It was not until I picked up a book again and read Those Things in Ming Dynasty. When I read the last chapter, about Chongzhen's suicide on Meishan, Li Zicheng's entry into Beijing, and the Qing army's entry into the pass, with the whole world in chaos. At that moment, Zhu Xieke was sitting on the top of Huangshan Mountain, listening to the sound of snow melting all night. All of this tells you that no matter how great the century-old foundation, the eternal fame, or the everlasting glory is, it's not as good as living your life in the way you like. From then on, my mind became suddenly clear. What actually forced me to make the decision were some small things. It was the first time I met Irene. Orion and I rarely went to a wedding together. I took it very seriously and arranged everything in advance. Orion and I drove in one car, arrived together, and were supposed to sit at the head table. Just before getting in the car, the moment I was about to open the passenger's side door, the door was suddenly pushed open from the inside. I couldn't dodge in time and was hit straight. I was wearing high-heeled shoes and almost fell after being hit. I took a few steps back to barely steady myself. For a moment, I felt dizzy, with tears and snot running down, and the place where I was hit hurt badly. The door was quickly closed again, and the car window slowly rolled down. A young and lively face appeared, playfully sticking out her tongue at me. "Sorry, ma'am." President Orion gave me a ride on the way. Inside the car, Orion looked at me apologetically. "Athena. I'm sorry. She's Irene, my new secretary. She didn't do it on purpose just now. Please forgive her." I sternly rebuked him. Is there such a coincidence in the world? Just when I was pulling the door, she happened to get out and didn't even notice there was someone standing by the door. Besides, if there's an explanation to be made, it should be her. You're not her. How do you know the situation at that time? Orion's expression changed drastically. Just as he was about to say something, Irene opened the door again. Her eyes filled with tears. On her round face, the tears were like pearls falling on a jade plate. She said, "Feel wrongly. Ma'am, it's all my fault. I made you and President Orion quarrel. I'll leave now." After saying that, she ran away. Orion got out of the car, chased after her a few steps, and grabbed her. "Get off after I send you to your place. Be good. This is a villa area, and you can't get a taxi here." So she obediently got into the back seat. After that, Orion ignored me and got into the car on his own, sulkily looking ahead. I could drive to the wedding venue myself, but it would make my parents worry that Orion and I had a bad relationship. Now they were already constantly reminding me to pay attention. I didn't want to make things more complicated, so I also got into the back seat of the car and sat next to Irene. Orion got even angrier. He turned his head and shouted at me, "I even gave you the passenger seat. What else are you not satisfied with? Why do you have to be so difficult?" I didn't indulge him and retorted directly, "Do you have to rebuke me in front of an outsider like this? Making me lose face? Are you so impatient with me? Where has your good temper gone?" He was suddenly stunned, like a jammed record player. I continued, "She's been sitting in the car for a long time from the company to here, right? The seat was warmed by her. She just got up, and you want me to sit on it? Is there any compelling reason for me to sit in that seat? Can't I feel uncomfortable? My mother has a severe cleanliness obsession, and although I didn't want to be influenced by her, I inevitably have some minor cleanliness habits. I've rarely sat on chairs in public areas since a long time ago." Orion can't be unaware of this. He used to be very considerate and put his coat on the chair for me to sit on. But now he not only doesn't care but has probably completely forgotten. At this moment, he finally lost his temper completely, like a deflated ball. I said warily, "Let's go. Doctor, we'll be late if we don't go now." After the car started, Irene timidly said to me, "Mrs. Orion, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have sat in the passenger seat. I just thought that if the boss is driving, it would be even more inappropriate for me to sit in the back, like I'm the boss." My voice was cold. "Stop it. Every word you said and everything you did from the beginning to the end don't seem like what a person in your position should do." I said to Orion in the front, "Say, is the company going to lose money? Do you need to cut costs and hire people like this? Are there no professionals left for you to choose from?" Orion tried to hold back his anger and argued with me, "Athena, can you stop being so sarcastic? She's just a little girl." I also tried to hold back my anger. "You told me that the company isn't a charity and doesn't keep idle people." Orion took a deep breath and found another point to argue with me. "I'd rather use some newbies with potential than some old-timers without potential." I sneered, "Who do you think you're fooling? You can use this argument in the technical department or the sales department, but it definitely doesn't apply to the administrative department." Orion hit the steering wheel with his hand, and the car let out a loud honk. causing passers-by to look over. It seemed that Orion could only vent his anger in this way. After a long time, he calmed down and continued to debate with me. Athena. No one is born knowing everything. Everyone starts as a newbie. Start as a newbie? I continued to sneer. But there should be a training process. Right? Look at her. She looks completely ignorant. It's clearly like she's skipped 3 levels. You're just fooling yourself with that statement. You. Orion turned to look at me. His eyes red. I shouted. Don't look at me. Look at the road. You have a beauty by your side. You won't die in vain. I still have a son to raise. Finally, Irene beside us burst into tears. Orion shouted. Can you fucking stop crying? Aren't you causing enough trouble? The car finally fell silent. At the wedding, Orion, who had calmed down, asked me, what exactly do you dislike about Irene? Why are you so against her? Then, went on a low sigh. He added with a bit of smugness. Are you jealous of her? You're a mother of a child. But you're still like a child. Getting jealous of a little girl. My expression was indifferent. And my tone was sharp. You know very well whether she was promoted, break the rule. I advise you to put away your dirty thoughts. I'm not dead yet. You. Orion's face turned red with anger at being seen through. Fine. Then tell me. Exactly what did she do wrong? Besides almost hitting you with the cart or by accident. I looked at him meaningfully. Isn't this enough? Leaving aside whether she did it on purpose or not, just her panicked state alone makes her unqualified for the job. Orion looked a bit embarrassed. This point is debatable. Tell me something else. Preferably something conclusive. Of course. There's conclusive evidence. I said slowly and unhurriedly. Even if I'm not your wife. I'm a shareholder. If she had done some research, she would know that the marketing supervisor is still acting. And the real supervisor is me. I'm still on maternity leave. First, she almost hit me. And then she sat in the car and explained to me. Have you ever seen a subordinate sitting and talking to their superior in the workplace? I'm telling you. Orion. In a situation where a mistake has been made, as a subordinate, one simply can't sit still. Orion slightly lowered his head. When he raised it again, he said firmly, I believe in my own judgment. I'll train her well. Just wait and see. For the first time, I looked at him up and down as if I didn't know him. He felt uncomfortable being stared at by me and turned to the side. From then on, Orion seemed to have found a perfect excuse for himself to support and cultivate Irene in every possible way. In front of me, he was also justifiable in being nice to her. Despite my doubts, he promoted her from secretary to assistant. Once, when he mentioned Irene to me, he was very proud. You don't know. It's because of the pressure from you, and Irene has more motivation to move up. And I have more reason to cultivate her. I replied lazily, a man who competes with his wife has no future. He angrily threw his coat on his arm and walked out the door. Now it's good. He doesn't need to avoid me anymore. I'm also leaving. Going on a very long journey. Didn't he not want this family? Then let it fall apart. When they got their first big order through cooperation, they held a small celebration party in the company. It was said that there would be additional rewards. And this was just an appetizer. They ordered high-end sushi takeout and shared it with many colleagues. When they were in high spirits, Irene started taking selfies. She held a selfie stick. And to cooperate with her, Orion got very close to her. Their heads and faces were almost touching. Everyone else became the background. And the photo was almost like a close-up with just the two of them. Irene then posted the photo on Moments with the caption, "Mission accomplished." I silently took a screenshot. I might not use this for the divorce. But I had other uses for it. Subsequently, I got quite a few more selfies of hers through Moments. For example, when she was sick, Orion went to take care of her. This time, the photo showed a hand with a needle inserted and Orion's hand very close to it. The caption was 2 hands. 1 heart. Orion's ring was also exposed in the photo. He didn't seem to mind at all and gave a thumbs up right away. I took a screenshot of this along with Orion's name on it. When it was Irene's birthday, a lot of people came to the office. The cake was huge and was ordered in the company's name. In the photo, Irene and Orion were in the center again. The caption was, "What to do when you meet a generous boss." Naturally. If the boss doesn't abandon me, I will follow him. At a private party on a small yacht, Orion took her along in the name of contacting clients. Having seen the world, Irene was no longer the little pitiful who would cry when she saw me back then. She exuded a sense of relaxation. Wearing a bikini, posing like a socialite in front of the camera, showing her white teeth, and laughing wildly and triumphantly. Behind her was a large figure of Orion, wearing casual clothes, chatting and drinking with others at the moment. Irene's caption was, "Coming to this kind of party," with each person having a female companion. "It's really easy to be misunderstood. I won't come again next time." There was also a photo of a BMW car on Moments. The caption was, "Year-end bonus in hand, overjoyed. But the boss said this is just the beginning. May I ask everyone what's next?" I can't even imagine. Emoji of secretly laughing. I talked to several acquaintance ladies and asked if, since this woman was so capable as a shareholder and the boss's wife, I should also do something. The ladies pursed their lips and smiled, all saying that they hadn't heard how capable she was. They just saw President Orion always taking her out. I nodded. Orion used to handle business affairs in a matter-of-fact way, being quick and decisive. But after partnering with Irene, the time he stayed on business trips increased significantly. He knew I was familiar with the company's operations and didn't hide from me, saying, "The girl loves to have fun, so I might as well relax too." So Orion's figure could often be seen in the photos Irene posted on Moments. Sometimes he was helping her carry her bag, and sometimes he was getting her ice cream. I collected all these photos and made them into emoticons. Especially the first close-up photo of the two of them. Due to the camera angle, their faces were almost distorted, making it perfect for an emoticon. One had little stars popping out from the chest, and the other had little hearts popping out from the chest. And I added the caption, "Stars and the moon are not a perfect match. Stars should match little hearts." I remade the yacht photo and added the text, "Big bosses are all fleeting clouds. Sister is the most beautiful alone." Then I used these emoticons in our ladies group. All of a sudden the group became extremely lively. Many ladies said I was good at having fun and had taste. I didn't hold back either. Almost whatever Irene posted on Moments, I made corresponding emoticons. But I didn't expect these emoticons could not only discuss those two but also have other functions. I found that my presence in the ladies group was not very high originally, but after this series of actions I almost became the core figure. Because I exposed my family's dirty laundry, many ladies privately messaged me about relationship problems, and some even wanted to take me along for investments. These photos soon reached Orion's hands. He came to me furiously and threw a stack of photos on the table beside me. I played tricks on him and put on an act. With a facial mask on, I grabbed his sleeve on the verge of crying, "Honey, believe me, I'm clean outside. Nothing has happened. These photos are all doctored." Orion's overwhelming anger suddenly disappeared. He looked at me like I was a monster and said, "What are you talking about?" I continued to act. "You rushed home angrily. Of course. You believed some slander and thought I was fooling around outside. Isn't that the case?" I asked as I took off the facial mask. I looked at those photos seriously and sneered in my heart. Who else could be in the photos but him and Irene? So I really laughed out loud. "Huh. I thought it was some fake photos of me with a handsome guy that made you so angry. But it's actually you too? And what are you angry about?" Orion's face turned livid. "What do you mean? You too, you too. Us too? Athena. Be serious. Don't look so reckless." The next second I also changed my expression, becoming cold and stern. I asked him, "Well, you tell me. What's going on with these photos? What's going on? It's all about business. How could you become like this? Being suspicious all day long. Looking like you're about to catch someone in bed." He asked me angrily. I just said, if it's all about business and she's the one who posted the photos. Not me taking candid photos. Why are you getting angry? He was stunned. I continued, "She can post on her Moments. But I can't forward? Are you like America? With your own rules just to sanction me? Open your eyes wide and look carefully. Are there any insulting words in my captions? No, right? So, what are you so guilty about? Who's guilty? Orion seemed to have finally caught me in the wrong and started to fight back. I just think what you're doing is not right. You're making it hard for the girl. Do you know that? Well, I don't know about that. I composed myself and said inferiorly. I only know that her posting these things has made people in the circle talk about it, and it's very difficult for me. Since it's already a mess, it's better to expose it. This way, I can still hold my head up in the lady circle, and save myself from being gossiped about behind my back all day long. Orion frowned tightly as if he had heard something incredible. His fists clenched and unclenched and clenched again. I became completely cold-hearted with a gloomy face. Orion, you're not the only one who can get angry. I'm not made of clay either. Stop pretending. Be generous and honest, and I might think more highly of you. His face turned red and he turned to leave. Before leaving he only said one sentence. I don't know what you're talking about. The moment he closed the door I threw a glass cup at it. Just as the door wasn't fully closed the glass cup shattered on the ground. I guessed the shards might splash on him. Then I cursed fuck you. He originally wanted to open the door and say something more, but finally he closed the door and left without looking back. Now it's good. I've left home for a long journey, and that door doesn't need to be opened, and closed and opened again. It can be completely shut. I've been drifting on the sea for 4 months, and almost don't want to leave. My son, who was originally listless from being exhausted by the interest classes, has now become full of vitality. Every day he excitedly tells me where it's fun and wants to go there again. He says that dolphins can be seen somewhere and wants to go there with me. I listen with a smile. Looking at him chattering on, I feel that this trip is worth it even if it's not for the divorce. Of course I haven't been idle about the divorce. Since the lawsuit request has been submitted, the property is naturally under supervision. But I'm afraid of being at a disadvantage, so I keep sending people to audit the company under various pretexts. After several teams of people went down, even the old accounts were dug up. I guess they're so busy dealing with this that they no longer have time to come up with ideas to cheat me. Seeing that the child is happy, even my parents have nothing to say. Reading history books can make people wise. After this step I've naturally thought about several subsequent steps. Orion, if you like to oppose your wife so much, then just wait for my countermoves. About a month later I woke up facing the sunrise on the balcony of the cruise ship. Suddenly a phone call came in. I saw that it was from Orion. I knew that what was coming had to come. If he took the initiative to mention divorce, it would also be a good choice, and I could accept it. I picked up the phone. Facing this turning point in my life, my heart was pounding. Unexpectedly on the other end came Orion's sobbing sound. I didn't know what time it was in the country. Time was already blurry for me, and the time in the country didn't matter much. I could hear that Orion was almost choking with sobs, which was completely different from his usual cold and self-controlled self. To be honest, he usually had a serious face and only relaxed a little when he saw Irene. Sometimes I also thought whether the two of them were a match made in heaven and if I was breaking them up. But now it doesn't matter anymore. Orion and I are coming to an end. Athena. What on earth have I done to end up like this? With my wife and child gone. When I get home, it's cold and deserted. There's not even anyone to serve me soup and rice. I didn't expect him to say such emotionally revealing words. Caught off guard, I was stunned for a moment. And I sneered at him, the great President Orion. First, you pretended to be crazy and stupid, only daring to spoil a woman secretly. Then you played the victim, hoping your wife would come home to cover up the mess. Orion. Still the same words. Be generous and honest, and I might think more highly of you. By the way, having fulfilled my ambition, how did you answer me when I said these words to you last time? You slammed the door and left. Well, now that the annoying me is not at home, you can maintain your gentlemanly demeanor. Slowly close the door. And then leave that home. Bless you. May all your wishes come true. After saying that I hung up the phone and almost burst out laughing. If it wasn't about divorce, this kind of inexplicable call should be made less. Just as I was thinking this, the phone rang again. Orion was sobbing on the other end. Honey. Come home. I don't want a divorce. I want to live a good life with you. I was impatient to listen to him. The atmosphere here is not suitable for talking about this. Let's talk when I get back. See you in 2 years. But Orion on the other end became happy. Honey. When are you coming back? Come back? I was impatient. What come back? I mean, I'm having a great time right now and don't want to talk about these messy marital issues. What were you doing in the early years? When it was time to talk properly. You didn't. Instead, you have to come and spoil my mood at this time. Orion, did I owe you money in my last life and not pay it back? Don't you insist on competing with me to see who wins? You won. Your trusted assistant is indeed very capable. Which is obvious to all and known to everyone. You won. Is that okay? I lost, Orion, I lost. Orion. You're really something. You've completely won over your wife. You're amazing. Only the sound of Orion's sobbing came from the other end of the phone. He had nothing more to say, but he didn't seem to want to hang up either. Once again I hung up the phone first. He called again, but this time I didn't answer. It seemed that Orion was about to shed all the tears in his life. Speaking of Orion and me, we did have affectionate days. We got to know each other as teenagers, fell in love as young people, and became a middle-aged couple. Our relationship developed smoothly and sweetly all the way. Orion isn't a person good at words, but there's one sentence he said that I still remember. He said I was the right person. He met the right person at the right time. In terms of family background, Orion comes from a very good family. Otherwise our business startup wouldn't have been so smooth. But my family is not bad either. At least I'm an excellent candidate within the scope of Orion's family's choice of daughter-in-law. Maybe it was too smooth. Later Orion and I became somewhat dull, so much so that he needed to add some spice. Gradually his taste changed and he needed more and more of these spices, to the extent that the spices dared to challenge the staple food. Well, the past can't be retrieved. It's time to turn the page on the past. I told myself this. But that night I felt a bit sad. I started to reminisce about a relationship that was about to die. Actually, after the door-hitting incident, and before the emoji pack incident, he briefly tried to repair our relationship. One day I was chatting with the confidant among the ladies. I turned on a video call and chatted with her while doing flower arrangement. We talked about a model couple in the circle, who broke up because of a mistress, and we both felt quite sorry. That confidant said, you know, the mistress in their family is really something. Not only is she a genuine technical backbone, but she's also beautiful and has a clean temperament. I casually cut off a flower branch and said mockingly, yeah, they don't deserve to be pitied. Only I'm the one who's really wronged. The one in my family has poor taste. He has a unique preference. When looking for a mistress, he doesn't even find a prettier one. Apart from being able to manipulate men with her weak temperament, she has nothing to show for herself. TSK. The other side laughed and said, look at you with such a sharp tongue. If it comes to weak temperament, patients are even weaker. Could it be that the one in your family likes that type? I sneered and said, maybe he does. The lady on the other side said, jokes aside, we can't just divorce to make way for others. Drag it out. Just don't get divorced. Outlast the mistress until she gets old. I put down the scissors in my hand and fell into thought. I'm not saying I haven't thought about divorce. Orion has been getting more and more excessive. And Irene's moments in the WeChat moments are becoming more and more frequent. I've already started asking someone to make hemojis about her. But divorce? Well, Orion and I have been husband and wife for so many years. And our dependence and entanglement are extremely deep. It's like slowing down when turning a corner while driving. When I need to make a turn in our marriage, it's actually impossible to do it easily. I always have to slow down first. Reduce the speed to the minimum at the deepest part of the curve, and then accelerate and drive away after the front of the car turns. I sighed. And a sigh came from behind me, which startled me. Orion, who is usually not at home during the day, suddenly appeared behind me. Silent like a ghost. I didn't know how long he had been standing there. Orion looked a bit stunned at first, then a bit dejected. He found a nearby sofa and sat down. He said to me in a low voice, I was wondering how everyone knew about me and Irene. So it was you who was speaking ill of us everywhere. Athena, I know you're angry. But do you know that what you're doing harms others without benefiting yourself? I came back to my senses from the shock and was extremely angry. I took a few deep breaths. opened the WeChat group of the ladies, and scrolled through the previous chat records to show him. That day all the ladies were there chatting animatedly. They gathered the photos of mistresses from each family and commented on them one by one. When it came to Irene, someone said I said this girl wasn't honest a long time ago. Mrs. Orion didn't admit it. She said she had confidence in her husband and patted her chest hard at that time. Look, now she's been slapped in the face. I wasn't there that day, so I didn't come out to defend myself, nor could I defend myself because what that lady said was true. I did give Orion complete and thorough trust. I thought that being elegant and from a good family, he would be different from others. I scrolled through the screen bit by bit for Orion to see clearly. The more Orion read, the more relaxed his brows became. Finally, Hadi Fafeldlayer Psi. He said happily. You're still the best. Athena. I knew you're not like those vulgar people. My expression turned cold. And I repeated his words. I'm not a vulgar person. So I have to be wronged by you and prove my innocence. So, I have to bear this shame and embarrassment. Just as I was about to flare up, Orion suddenly hugged me tightly and said, It's my fault. Honey. I'll correct it. Just watch my performance. But there's really nothing between me and her. Don't scare yourself. The next day, I got up and washed up in my own bedroom. Orion and I have been sleeping in separate rooms for a long time. I was having breakfast when I suddenly heard the sound of a car horn in the yard. I couldn't help but put down the food in my hand and go out to check. There was Orion, standing by the car, looking energetic, and smiling as he greeted me. Morning, honey. How about a spontaneous trip? His eyes were bent in a smile. The light in the study was on for half the night last night. He stayed up late working overtime for today's trip, right? Seeing my hesitation, he explained. Mom and Dad are on their way here. They'll take care of the baby. You come with me. There's a luxurious buffet dinner on a cruise ship in the neighboring city now. We'll rush there today. Have seafood on the cruise ship. Stay overnight. And come back tomorrow. I was quite attracted by what he said and couldn't help but agree. When I was about to get in the car, I opened the door. But suddenly a burst of anger welled up in me. There were obvious food crumbs on the passenger seat. And even the floor mat had them. I was shocked and angry. My mouth wide open. I was shocked because these food crumbs were so obvious. How could Orion not see them? I was angry because since he saw them but ignored them, it meant this was a common phenomenon. So he was used to it. Who was always sitting in his passenger seat, and who was so blatant about trashing his car. Influenced by me. Orion also has some cleanliness habits. Usually, he would never allow others to do this. Who this person was obvious. Orion was originally full of enthusiasm. Seeing my shocked and angry expression, he followed my gaze and an unnatural look flashed across his face. He said to me nervously, It was accidentally soiled. If you mind, I'll have someone clean it right away. I said, No need, I'm not going. Orion became angry and said, Athena, is it really necessary for you to lose your temper with me over such a trivial matter? Do you know how much I sacrificed for today? I just said infuriately. When you travel with her, you never consider it a sacrifice, right? It's all natural and just right. Orion frowned deeply. His hands clenched tightly. I added, Since it's a spontaneous trip, then I can just as easily decide not to go. Besides, I said with infinite mockery, who actually likes this kind of impromptu let's go right away thing? It's probably that young girl. You're so used to coaxing her like this that you copied it to coax me. Orion, I actually like to make a plan before setting off. I was giving you face today. That's it. Let's not make each other more unhappy. After saying that, I turned around and left. Orion shouted behind me. Athena, don't regret it. Later, I learned that Orion was going to transfer Irene away from his side, but after that day, it was as if nothing had happened, and everything went back to normal. Moreover, their interactions became more and more blatant and frequent. Later, my emojis were made, which shocked the ladies' circle. Orion and I became even more irreconcilable. I started to arrange the divorce matters. Finally, hadn't fulfilled their obsession. On the day of the company's anniversary celebration, I expected that the banquet would not be a pleasant one. So I booked an international cruise for a global trip in advance. Before long, the divorce application I had submitted earlier was delivered to Orion by the court. The impending collapse of the edifice is lamentable. But there are signs. Orion and I can't go back. The international cruise ship docked in the Aegean Sea. I took the child to Santorini. The blue-roofed, white-walled houses carry the love and affection of lovers. But if there's no partner, it doesn't actually stop one from enjoying the beautiful scenery. Arriving at one of the top resorts on the planet, I was in a great mood. Actually, after staying on the cruise ship for a month, my mood had already improved a lot. Some people say that you only think of traveling when you're unhappy. And I deeply agree. Traveling really relaxes both the body and the mind. That's when Orion showed up. I was sitting by the sea, drinking coffee. The sea was right at my feet, and the waves were lapping against the shore. Orion, dressed in casual clothes, appeared in front of me. He tried to make small talk, pretending to be relaxed. Aren't you surprised? I deliberately disgusted him and said, just thinking about who you came from makes me feel that your presence is ruining the mood. Orion's smile froze. I transferred her away. I'll issue a dismissal notice in a while. I don't want to make it too ugly. You've never been so careful in handling things with me, I said inferently. Orion, you've never shown me any respect. You've already trampled my dignity under your feet. Is it fun, Orion? He lowered his head and then shook it. It's not fun. The price is too high. I can't afford it. His voice got lower and lower, and finally, it was almost inaudible with a hint of sobbing. I originally planned to talk to him about divorce in Milan, but after careful consideration I chose this honeymoon resort instead. Let's get divorced. We're already tired of each other. I don't know what you're still dragging it for. I'm originally a shareholder of the company. Transfer part of the real estate and bonds to the child's name. And we'll split the rest evenly. That's not excessive. That's it. Let's part amicably. I wish you an early happy marriage and another precious son in advance. Orion's eyes suddenly turned red. He rubbed his face with his hands to calm himself down. I know I've gone too far. But no matter how excessive I was, I didn't cheat. I was wrong. But I didn't cross the line. Suddenly I lost my patience. Don't you like her? If you do, then be together. What's money? You can always earn it back if you lose it. Besides, the money during our marriage is half mine anyway. I've also contributed a lot to starting the business. Cut the crap. He quickly defended himself. I've never said I like her. I replied inferently and mechanically. Maybe not in words. But your actions speak volumes. Suddenly my temper flared up again. You know what? Do I really have to teach you a lesson about love? Fine. I'll be a good Samaritan to the end. Let me tell you. Your words and deeds towards her reveal your liking everywhere. The love in your eyes can't be hidden. Don't miss her. She's the love of your life. Don't waste your life. You two are a perfect match. He shook his head vehemently in denial. No. My feelings for her can be described as pity. Or perhaps as promoting and cultivating her. It can be anything. But definitely not love. I can tell the difference. I was too lazy to listen. So, we can't reach an agreement. Then we'll see each other in court. Suddenly he grabbed my hand. What can I do to keep you from divorcing me? Name your terms. His face was full of sincerity. And the hand holding mine was so tense that the knuckles were clearly defined. My heart suddenly started pounding. I had anticipated this outcome. That he would cling to me and not agree to the divorce. Although I thought this was unlikely to happen. It was happening right in front of me. I thought about the countermeasures I had deduced. And I began to hesitate. As if seeing what was on my mind. Orion pressed further. As long as you say it. I'll agree to any request. As long as we don't divorce. I lowered my head and pondered for a moment. When I looked up again, my eyes were clear. Fine. Since you said so, I'll state my terms. We cannot divorce. I'll be the president of the company. You help me at the beginning. And later I'll make decisions on my own. I calmly explained the plan. You go home to take care of the child and also take over the investment in stocks, real estate, and funds at home. These are not small amounts either. You'll need my guidance at the beginning. Orion didn't think much about it. His expression gradually became filled with joy, which spread from the surface. Then he genuinely smiled and said, "Agreed. This trip has finally been worthwhile." Our whole family took a trip to Greece and then flew back to China. By the time I took the position of president, Irene had disappeared, and I didn't really care. I had more important things to do. I made a simple plan for my work, combining my experience and insights from years of investment and financial management. I made some adjustments to my and the company's future. First, I'll recruit a vice president who understands management to assist me in managing the company and make up for my shortcomings. Second, according to my investment experience, the company has a high debt-to-asset ratio, which poses a relatively high risk. Third, the company's main business is software outsourcing, and the business projects are to single, also with a relatively high risk. We need to expand a customer base. I handed my business plan to Orion and asked for his opinion. I've never been in charge of the overall situation before. At the initial stage, I still need Orion's support. Orion first affirmed my first point and praised me a lot. Regarding the second point, he said there was no way around it. Software outsourcing is like the construction contractor in the construction industry, which needs to advance funds and often has the project payment delayed during settlement. As for the third point, he said it was easier said than done. I nodded. Actually, I really had room to maneuver on the third point. Over the years, I've been very popular in the ladies' circle, and many people give me face. Marketing depends on connections, and these are all my resources. Once high-quality customers come in, those who always delay payments can be phased out, then the capital will flow better, and the debt-to-asset ratio will decrease. My efforts were recognized by all shareholders, including Orion. I didn't let them down. At the same time, I sent someone to investigate Irene's whereabouts. I found out that when my husband sent Irene away, he gave her 5 million yuan. I immediately took legal action, demanding that she return the community property of the husband and wife. Irene came to me in a rage. At first, the security guards stopped her from entering. I generously let her come to the president's office to meet me. I love watching my opponents fall. Since she came to present herself for my viewing, I might as well take a look. When I saw Irene again, she was neither the poor little thing I first met nor the aggressive woman she became later. She had gained some confidence from the passage of time, but as soon as she opened her mouth, she lost her cool. "What right do you have to sit here?" I couldn't hold back my laughter. I almost spat out my coffee but managed to hold it back in time. With a smile still on my lips, I said to her, "The winner takes all. This position is a reward for the winner." Her face flushed, and she was speechless. After a long while, she said, "The 5 million was promised to me by President Orion. You can't go back on it." "I can veto it," I said firmly. "This is the power of a wife. I know you have low morals, but surely you're not ignorant of the law." "I don't have time to educate you about the law. You'd better learn about it yourself." Suddenly, she burst out, "He doesn't love you at all. If he did, I wouldn't be here." I remained calm. "True." She was taken aback. "You don't care?" I shook my head. "I do care. I care a lot whether my husband loves me or not. So, because of your advice, I'll file for divorce again." Irene was left speechless, staring at me in shock. When Orion learned about this, he sighed, but he didn't dare to talk to me harshly anymore. Instead, he tried to persuade me gently. "Sorry, honey. I made you angry again. I just thought she was poor." "No, there are so many poor people. I can't pity them all." I nodded. At least this was a reasonable thing to say. And I motioned for him to continue. Her reputation was ruined because of me. She couldn't stay in this city. So I thought of giving her some capital to start over. It's a kind of compensation, and also a way to send her away. Anyway, having fulfilled my insertion, it has nothing to do with romantic feelings. I said to him infuriately. I don't agree. First, her reputation was ruined, and because of herself. Originally, had in Kalfilway and Sasher. Although she was close to you. Due to work relations. Even if there were rumors. Her reputation wouldn't be too bad. If she hadn't posted every detail on Moments. No one would know what she looks like or the details between you two. She revealed it all by herself. Second, you sent out signals that she could get close. And she came running. Both of you are responsible for this. So, what's this 5 million for? Hush money? But you don't even admit that you had an affair with her. Or that you even made any clear statements to her. Do we need to have a three-way confrontation? Orion shook his head. There's no need for that. 5 million isn't a huge amount. I raised my hand to interrupt him. 5 million isn't a huge amount? You're being a bit too exaggerated. Do you know what 5 million means? For a software professional. Except for some high-end ones. On average, it takes more than 30 years to earn about 10 million in a lifetime. Why should she take away half of someone else's lifetime wealth all at once? Just because of the disgusting things she did. So she can't stay in this city? Hearing this, Orion couldn't take it anymore. Okay. You're right. Honey. I was inappropriate in handling this. I sneered. I'm already being extremely kind by not going to her next workplace to expose her past. And she still wants to take money from me? Then I changed the topic. Actually, you could have divorced me. Then you could decide how much money to give. By the way, if you two get married later, yours will be hers. Why make it so complicated? Orion couldn't listen anymore and quickly brought up the topic of our son to stop me. 5 years later, I had firmly established myself in the business world. Not only could I manage my own company, but I could also easily handle opening a new one. I did better than Orion in all aspects. Even if Orion wanted to come back to the company, he wouldn't know how to bring it up. Moreover, Orion's intention to change was very obvious. He seemed like a doting husband. Never mentioning going back to the company and leaving everything up to me. I wouldn't get involved with other men just to get back at Orion. My life isn't for that. Regaining freedom and having enough space to showcase my talents and enthusiasm is my ultimate goal. This is also the realization I got from reading when I was at a low point in my life. This is how I want to live my life. Indeed, there were times when I came home late from socializing with the opposite sex. Orion would always wait for me restlessly and wouldn't sleep until I got home. He tried to ask about my whereabouts several times, but finally gave up because what he did back then was much worse than what I was doing. Finally, having felt late, he sighed and said, "So, this is how it feels to wait at home." I replied to him, "I'm still innocent. And you're already waiting like this. If there were some bad rumors, wouldn't you be worried to death?" He was left speechless, staring at me in disbelief. Sometimes he would share things about life with me, but except for our son's daily life, I was indifferent to everything else. Which hit Orion hard. Sometimes he would murmur to me. I was really a jerk back then. But I swapped positions with him not to make him reflect. I just wanted to climb up more smoothly. Who wants to listen to him say these things? On our 10th wedding anniversary, Orion led me to the university we once attended together. Under the tree where he confessed his love to me in the early years, he took out a diamond ring again and proposed to me once more. "Athena, will you marry me?" His eyes were shining, and his face was radiant. Then he knelt down on one knee. I smiled and pulled him up but didn't take the ring. His face darkened. He said dejectedly, "Athena, I know I was a jerk in the past few years. Although I've tried my best to make up for it these years. It seems you don't appreciate it. But luckily, we still have many more decades ahead. I'll treat you like this from now on." People always think they have many more decades to spend with their families. If this one doesn't work, there's the next. In fact, time is like trust and money. It doesn't last long. There aren't that many decades waiting for you. Once you miss it, it's gone. Any extra time given to you is a gift from heaven. I led him to the basketball court, where there was a small podium. I asked him, "Do you remember any interesting things that happened here?" He shook his head. Actually, I've often thought about our past these years. But I really can't recall anything that happened here. I replied to him. There was a beauty contest held here. Boys from several classes got together and, just like the Miss Hong Kong pageant, selected all kinds of beauties. Oh, he suddenly realized. I remember now. At that time. I wasn't chosen as the campus belle. But I was chosen as the miss most likely to cause love at first sight. I continued for him. I wasn't present. And you went up on stage to accept the award for me. They asked if you were jealous. And you said you were proud. Orion listened to me with a smile and kept nodding. But then my tone suddenly turned sharp. So, Orion, I'm different from those ladies. I can tolerate mistresses because either their own conditions or to prove where their mental states have collapsed. Marrying an outstanding man is like winning the lottery for them. But I'm different. I've always been proud. With my conditions. If not you, there would be someone else who could also bring me a good material life and various opportunities. And even on my own, I believe I can make a name for myself. Look at you, Orion. I'm only 28. And you've already cheated. My youth is still here. But your love has vanished. What right do you have to do this? Orion's face turned pale. And he stood there stunned. I continued to criticize. You let a woman who is much inferior to me in all aspects into our lives. Trampled my self-esteem and confidence into the mud. And let another person squeeze into our marriage. What makes you think I would accept you again? To be honest, dragging the divorce for 5 years is not only because I need time to buffer before re-entering the business world, but also because of our son. I made a mistake. And I tried my best to make it up to him. Our son was too young back then. I chose the wrong husband. And I can't let my son bear all the consequences of my mistake. I had to let him enjoy the happiness of a complete family for a few years. And then it's my turn to be free. Among all these considerations, I never thought about you. How you feel has long been out of my consideration. Orion lowered his head, covered his face, and started sobbing softly. Let's get divorced while we still have some dignity left. After 5 years of stalemate and delay, Orion and I finally got divorced. Our son also got a share of the family property. The proportion for me, Orion, and our son is 541 respectively. I got most of the company's shares and took control of the company. Orion received more of the family's investments. But he has never been good at this field. This is the result I wanted 5 years ago. And now I've finally achieved it. Later, often in the quiet late nights, Orion would send me messages out of the blue. Sometimes the background was noisy. And sometimes it was very quiet. But without exception, he was always drunk, talking about heartache, excruciating heartache, until later, I replied to him. Orion, I have a boyfriend. Don't send me such messages anymore. But he still sent them occasionally. Until I replied to him again. Orion, I keep your contact information for our son's sake. Don't make me block you. I'm getting married. From then on, he never sent me any messages again. I heard that he wasn't doing well in the field of investment and finance. When we were still married, with my guidance, he was already a bit clumsy. The investment methods I told him, he often got the investment proportions wrong, resulting in reduced earnings. Now that he's on his own, he quickly suffered heavy losses. Later, he was left with only a few houses to live on by collecting rent. After that, I heard that he went to the city where Irene was and messed up Irene's life. He asked Irene, what did you say to her the last time you saw her? At first, Irene mocked him endlessly. What did I say? Of course. I said everything. You know. If you don't want others to know, don't do it. Orion stared at her with red eyes and threatened. I didn't do anything to you. Why are you slandering me? Irene burst out laughing. Didn't do anything? Your eyes clearly said you did. Besides, it's not just that kind of thing that counts. Then she asked seriously. I'm just curious. You've clearly done a lot. You're just short of that one thing, but you always claim to be innocent. Where's the innocence between us? Later, seeing that Orion was really terrifyingly crazy, Irene didn't dare to entangle with him anymore. Before fleeing in a hurry, She made things clear to him. Orion. The last time I saw your wife. She gave me a good scolding. I didn't even have a chance to say much. Really. I was only focused on asking for money. The topic was all about asking for money. I didn't say anything else. Orion, who had been like a chicken injected with stimulants, suddenly lost his momentum. He squatted down, hugged his head with his hands, and muttered to himself, "Then why won't she forgive me?" Irene walked carefully past him and said, "Because she's not stupid. She can guess everything. You don't necessarily have to hear it or see it with your own eyes. Many things can be felt with the heart. A woman knows whether she is cherished by a man or not. You can't deceive her. She knows exactly how far you'll betray her when you don't care about her. Actually, I was also deceived by you back then." Irene observed Orion while carefully preparing to run away. Seeing that Orion didn't react, Irene ran away as fast as she could and never returned to that city later. But after several twists and turns, she couldn't settle down and naturally ended up in a poor situation. Of course, all of this has nothing to do with me. It's just a joke for entertainment.